media bias, exposing the propaganda, and challenging you to use your brain. It's time to tap into the truth.
Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed time to tap into the truth. Welcome to today's broadcast. Hope you are having a great day wherever you are and whatever you may be doing. This is, of course, the third day of the new year. And, of course, that means that there's all kinds of things going on. There's been controversies already and question marks about the effectiveness of Obamacare plans. All that, and a new mayor in New York. Now, I've already expressed my concern for the city of New York. I don't live there. I didn't get a vote. But I do travel there quite often. In fact, I love Manhattan. It's exciting, it's energetic, and it's unique. You know, there's no other city in this country, or as far as I can tell, anywhere else in the world, although my traveling outside of the States has been limited, and can't say that I have a great deal of experience there. But what I do have to tell you is that I have been in a large number of places here within the states. The only state I have not been to at one point or another is Hawaii and Alaska. So I've been in all the continental. I have seen many, if not all, of the major cities within these states. I've spent time in all of them, and New York City is unique for many different facets. Although, one of the things that you'll find interesting, if you ever take the time, if you travel up from the south, is if you're walking around on the streets of Manhattan, you will hear every kind of accent, every kind of dialect. You will get to hear just about anything, to the point that almost everybody gets used to hearing them. The only thing that'll stand out, the only thing that'll draw attention, is the southern drawl. Because ordinarily, folks from the south don't tend to stay around long enough for people to get used to hearing that accent. And I kid you not, without fail, if you're doing it on a business trip one time, me and an employer were working a sales trade show. Is really what it was. We were doing sales, and we were in a restaurant, and a waitress that was working another table came from 3 tables over, because she heard a southern accent, and as she got closer, she realized not only was it southern, but it was a Tennessee accent. She was able to pick that out in the crowd because she was from Tennessee. And you'd be surprised, because, I mean, you really are. You hear this. So at any rate, the whole point, if you'll forgive my brief stroll down memory lane, is the fact that New York City is a city that I still have a great deal of admiration for. Don't get me wrong, I am still at heart a country boy. Would not want to live there long term, but I love visiting. I mean, I would have my fill at about the 2-week mark. But there's so much to do, so much to see, so much energy, and so many cool things going on in New York City that it pains me to think of how bad things are going to get for New York City being run by a blatant, obvious, open, ready to shove his agenda down your throat, so-called progressive. This guy was raising money for the Soviet Union here in the States when they were openly an enemy. This guy has been welcomed into Cuba under the Castro regime. This guy, he is dangerous. But he says all the right things to appeal to a heavily Democratic voting bloc. And there's no question, there's a heavy Democrat voting bloc that exists in New York City. But guys, just because somebody says they're a Democrat doesn't make them one. That's how the party at the national level has gotten in the shape it's in. Now, for those of you who are listening and listen to the show on a regular basis, chances are you're probably fairly conservative yourself. But depending on how old you are, you may or may not remember a point in time where, at the very least, you knew you could count on the Democratic Party to be, first, patriotic, and second, to put the country first. They just simply believed that government should play a larger role in providing for the poor. For the longest time, that was it. Good people with good intentions, they just had a bad idea about what the role of government should be. That's why they were more easily and more readily co-opted by the progressives. If you think government should do more, then that's where we're going to start. Let's let government do more. Now, the big news that was really making the rounds is what's one of the very first things that de-Blasio decides to do. Well, it's official. He's making his moves to ban horses in the city. Not all horses, but the horse-drawn carriages. You know, these things are a staple in parts of the city. It's a big tourist draw. I was reading an article today talking about how Phil Robinson and, of course, the Robinson family entertain millions and millions of Americans with a show surrounding a business that assists in the killing of ducks. That's what Duck Commander does. They make duck calls. What do you call ducks for? So you can shoot them. They sell to hunters. That's what the actual dynasty in Duck Dynasty is. Now, while most level-headed Americans see the practical value of what they do, New York City's new mayor, Mr. Bill-de-Blasio, would probably put an end to it. In fact, if he had the chance, I'm sure he would. Why? Well, because what's one of his first big moves? He's moving to ban horse-drawn carriages, and he wants to replace them with electric cars. Sounds good in theory. He appeals to the PETA parts of the base. Oh, animals should be treated better than people. Yes. Well, again, it's my understanding, and I can't speak to it from personal experience because I have never run a horse-drawn carriage business in New York. But I have some friends that have worked around the industry. Talked to one of them just today, as a matter of fact. And they tell me that these horses are very well treated and very well taken care of. That, in fact, the inspection process that goes on, if somebody gets caught mistreating a horse, their license gets pulled, and they don't get to do it anymore. So I'm just saying. The idea of adding the electric cars in place, well, that appeals to the green parts of the base, right? So again, he's playing politics and playing to the crowd, trying to make it sound like he's going to do something that really stands by the agenda, and it really just moves towards what the people of New York City care about. And hey, for right now, maybe that is what they care about. But I think their attitudes will change when the jobs start to dry up, when people face situations similar to what has destroyed Detroit. They might change their priorities a bit. At any rate, the newly installed mayor of New York City, said, "When it comes to horse-drawn carriages in New York City, it's over." Now, he was sworn into office by former President Mr. Slick Willie himself, Bill Clinton, and de Blasio aims to replace the horse-drawn carriages that have historically pulled visitors through Central Park with electric cars. Antique-style design electric cars are currently what are being considered. The mayor's team says that the plan will go retro in style and modern electric in horsepower, and it will help save the carriage workers' jobs that would otherwise end with the ban. So, possibly in the near future, during a trip to New York City, tourists can look forward to getting into an electric car. Wow. Can't wait for next December. You know, give you a chance to look forward to a cool, crisp winter night leading up to Christmas Eve, hitting the Snowline Park ride in an electric car. Now, the level of stupid may have hit a new level as far as a casual outside observer just looking in. If you don't understand what the real agenda is, if you don't understand that this is just a jumping off point, a starting point, then this just looks like something stupid. Now, they talk about trying to save the jobs of the carriage drivers. They'll get to drive electric cars. But wait a second. The ban is going into effect before they'll have even made a final determination on what the electric cars are going to be as far as what they're using. Sounds to me like somebody's going to be unemployed for at least a little while. And given the current status of the economy and the unquestionable fact that tax increases on city residents will be going up. I mean, there's nothing more progressive than paying more taxes, according to the people who claim to be progressive. So that might be coming a little down the road, but we know it's coming. But that's not even what concerns me most. You know, this is a jumping off point, and people have been talking about it today, and somebody mentioned it yesterday. Yesterday's the first I heard about it, but people were talking about it today. What's more concerning is during the speech taking office, de Blasio promised to tackle New York City's inequity crisis. He called it a crisis. Now, I don't know or understand what level of inequity is really going on, but the mayor's made promises. Now, we all know in the so-called progressive speak, inequity means we want poor people to vote for us. They also know that most people don't understand what equity really does mean. Equality is not exactly what most people think it is when they just hear the words. The way our framers, the founding fathers, saw equity, it was about opportunities. And we have an educational system in place. And, you know, we've made efforts at having a free market. The government keeps kind of interfering and keeps it from being all that free, but the point still stands that we make these efforts to have a free market, and with educational opportunities and the ability to go patent a unique idea, a product, or a system, you have an equal opportunity that cannot be matched anywhere else in the world. You have an opportunity for success based on the choices you make and decisions that you make and the things that you do. So how does a mayor, a governor, a legislator, a president, how do they attack inequity? Most inequity in this country is based on choices and decisions that were made by the individual. They know that. That's why, if you take the time to get to know the intellectual liberals, you know, the folks that are always the smartest in the room, they always think that they know how to spend your money better than you. They think they know all these control methods. They think they know better how to live your life. So they have every intention of telling you how. This is just an extension of that. This is the extension of all the bans that our previous mayor in New York City, everyone's favorite Mr. Michael Bloomberg, attempted to do. He pushed a nanny state agenda, and he did this so hard for almost the entirety of the 12 years he was in office, just to try and set the stage for the next guy that he knew was going to be even worse. Man, did he get this right. De Blasio made the promise that he is going to tackle this. Now, as I already mentioned, Bill Clinton administered the oath of office for Bill de Blasio. That was back on Wednesday on the 1st. Did that in the formal swearing-in ceremony for New York City's 109th mayor. Of course, de Blasio thanked his own family and then promised our larger New York City family that he would end what he's called the city's inequity crisis. He said his mission reaches deeper than keeping neighborhoods safe and streets clean. Which, you know, by the way, that's the primary job of any mayor. Really shouldn't be looking to do much more than that. No, he went on to say, quote, "We are called to put an end to economic and social inequities that threaten to unravel the city we love. And so today," this of course being back on Wednesday, "we commit to a new progressive direction in New York." I mean, this guy's open about it. He doesn't make any bones. He ran this way. The people of New York elected this guy knowing full well what he was all about. It's been said so much in the last couple of years, it's become almost cliche at this point, but elections have consequences, and I fear for the people living in New York City the extent of the consequences they're going to have to live with. Because even if this guy's a one-term mayor, he's going to be able to do so much damage, and he's obviously intent on doing exactly that. Now, he supposedly is invoking New York's tradition of activist leadership. So de Blasio mentions reformers like Al Smith and Jacob Riis and Eleanor Roosevelt, who challenged the status quo, who blazed trails of progressive reform and political action. People who took on the elite, who stood up to say that social and economic justice will start here and will start now. ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't figured it out by now, just so you know, anytime somebody talks about social justice, they don't give a rat's backside about justice. They're trying to push a political agenda that includes economic warfare, class warfare. They want the very rich hated by the middle class, and the middle class and the very rich hated by the poor, and the poor hated by everybody else, because the government starts trying to take from the middle class and the rich to give to the poor, because that's social justice. When true justice would be giving a ladder to the economic lower class so they can climb into the middle class. Put that ladder in place. You can put policies and procedures in place as a government that would be a stepping stone. But that's not what these people do. It's not what this guy's going to do. He's going to talk the talk. Every socialist talks this talk. Every communist that's ever overthrown a country got the people behind him for the communist takeover with this kind of talk. But inevitably, what actually ends up happening is the poor stay poor, the middle class become poor, and the rich either leave or become poor too. Except for the rich lucky enough to be in the clique. In this case, de-Blasio and friends. That's the way this works. And if you don't believe me, take a look. Do a little research and you will discover that this pattern exists. When you start talking about taking on the elite, who exactly is he talking about? He wants them, the people listening to his speech, to believe he's talking about Wall Street bankers. But in truth, he's part of the elite. At least as far as the political society in New York City. He went on to say in his speech that it's the tradition that inspires the work we now begin. A movement that sees the inequality crisis we're facing today and resolves that it will not define our future. No, I'm sure it won't, since your goal is to drag everyone down. Now, I know there are those who think that what I said during the campaign was just rhetoric, just political talk in the interest of getting elected. There are some who think now, as we turn to governing, well, things will continue pretty much like they always have. So let me be clear. When I said we would take dead aim at the tale of two cities, I meant it. And we will do it. I will honor the faith and trust you have placed in me, and we will give life to the hope of so many in our city. We will succeed as one city. De-Blasio went on to make promises of expanded paid sick leave to an additional 300,000 New Yorkers. That he would require big developers to build more affordable housing. Now, I'm interested to see who qualifies as a big developer in his mind. Something tells me someone friendly to his campaign may not qualify as a big developer, no matter how many contracts they get. He also promised to reduce the number of hospital closures and expand community health centers into poor neighborhoods. Although the IRS has already made it clear it plans on fining any type of health center or hospital that's providing indigent care as part of their enforcement of Obamacare. So, how is he planning on doing that, I wonder? He also promised to reform the city's stop and frisk policy, to impose a 5-year tax hike, really, already promising tax hikes, on the, quote, very wealthy, to fund full-day universal pre-K and after-school programs for every middle school student. A 5-year tax hike on the very wealthy. Again, I wonder who's going to qualify as very wealthy. And by the way, if they are very wealthy, what would it take for them to move? There are already a large number of relatively wealthy New Yorkers that have already left under the Bloomberg burden. De-Blasio is promising to drive those people out of the city, because that's what that would mean. Most of those people are already paying more than half of their total income in the form of taxes across the board anyway. How much more are you going to charge? How much more do you think they will take? Punitive taxes, what will the effect be? Now, de Blasio said that people earning between $500,000 and $1 million a year would see their taxes increase by an average of $973 a year. We do not ask more of the wealthy to punish success. We do it to create more success stories. Another quote from Mayor de Blasio. Regardless of what your motive may be, the bottom line is you're still trying to take from someone who supposedly earned it. I can't say that's the case in 100%, but I know most people who manage to have money and hang on to it, they've done something to earn it. That being here or there, you're still not going to create success stories unless you're only counting your own. You can't guarantee that you're creating anything. Again, it's pretty talk. And it plays well with the bleeding hearts. The tree-hugging hippie crap, folks. And as the Dr. Michael Savage would say, the red diaper doper babies. But, that's it. Government's not capable of creating success. Now, the new mayor noted that New York has faced many crises, including fiscal collapse, crime, terror attacks, and natural disasters. But now, in our time, we face a different crisis, an inequality crisis. It's not often the stuff of banner headlines in our daily newspapers. It's a quiet crisis, but one no less perilous than those that have come before. This is part of how you know he's full of crap. It's not new. Is there inequality between the lowest economic class, the middle class, and the rich hanging out in Manhattan? Obviously. There's no question. There's no doubt. Are all the folks hanging out in the Bronx and doing as financially well as the folks that live in Manhattan? But it's nothing new. It hasn't become any more distinct, except for the fact that fewer and fewer middle-class people are able to hang on to their position in the middle class. They're falling downward, but that's a result of the economy. There's no question that the so-called progressive ideology is at the root of what's wrong with the downward mobility anyway. It's not new. It hasn't come after these other crises. It's been going on the entire time that the city has existed. Now, he also talked about rebuilding communities from the bottom up and marching towards a fairer, more just, more progressive place to keep the promise of New York alive for the next generation. Now, the promise of New York, for the record, happens to be the fact that it's the starting point where individuals come to this country from Europe, from a lot of other places now. But initially, the European immigrants, New York City was the starting point. It was the land of opportunity. The promise of New York is the promise of opening up the American way of life, not the so-called progressive way of life. This man has guaranteed to take New York City down the same road that bankrupted Detroit. That's what you've gotten. Now, I understand the appeal. The guy talks tough. He talks about leading and doing stuff, and New Yorkers like guys that talk tough. Sometimes that alone is enough to get you elected. But now, the road ahead is what's going to be in question. It's what's going to be the problem. De-Blasio is going to do his darndest to make sure that policies are put in place that when it comes right down to it, they're destructive, they're hurtful, they will cause issues across the board. I hate that for the fine folks in New York. You deserve better. We'll keep an eye on it, and of course we'll keep reporting on it. To my friends in New York, hang in there. And good luck, because you're going to need it. I'm going to take a quick break right now, and then when we come back, we will continue. We'll move right along to our next topic, actually. Stay with us. Tap into the truth. Check us out at tapintothetruth.com for our latest blog post and for links to all of our past broadcasts. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and to follow us on Twitter. That's Tap Into the Truth right here on Spreaker Radio.
So I took a little bow and left the room. I did a little dance in the shadows too. Met a little doll and she looked like you, just like you. a little time, fill my prescription, but there's not any left at all. She's standing naked by the window, waiting for me to fall asleep. I always fall asleep. Took a little bow and left the room. I did a little dance in the shadows too. Met a little doll and she looked like just
You know, I don't know what it is about that song exactly, but I just keep thinking, when I hear that, something about it makes me think about the State Department while Hillary Clinton was still running it. I don't know why. It just seems like the Hillary Clinton State Department to me. The name of that song, by the way, is Miscommunication, which also is apropos for the State Department. Rather, the current John Kerry is running it, or the previous Hillary Clinton, who obviously now, thanks to a piece by the New York Times, the effort to whitewash her time as Secretary of State is well underway. The folks in the media are looking to try and help her get that image back. But I have one word for you, Americans. Benghazi. Until all the truth comes out about Benghazi, there is no way whatsoever that anyone should ever consider voting for this woman for anything higher than a local dog catcher. Don't trust her on your school board. Don't trust her in your state legislature. Don't trust her back in the federal legislature. And certainly don't make any effort to put her in the White House. She's already spent more time there than she deserved. She's dangerous. And for my conservative colleagues who don't like the policies of Mr. Barack Hussein Obama, aka the Occupier, Hillary is probably one of the few people that would make Barack look conservative. In the social media realm, there were a couple of big stories that kept just floating around like crazy today. Not real sure what the real purpose was, but some folks are going wild about this rumor that went on about sexual escapades between Hillary and Michael Weiner's wife. I forget her name. I did have it here a little while ago. Now, I don't know if there's any truth to those rumors, and I really don't normally like addressing rumors, but there's plenty of factual information to raise eyebrows and concern. One of the most interesting things that I heard said, though, in regards to the news article written about Benghazi, suggesting that it actually was largely, in fact, due to the stupid video. You know, the story that the Obama administration put out there first. Oh, it has nothing to do with Al-Qaeda. It has nothing to do with terrorists wanting to attack an American outpost on the anniversary of 9/11. It has nothing to do with the lack of security, the time after time, additional security concerns that were brought up by Ambassador Stevens himself, requesting additional security, additional personnel, additional barbed wiring, additional concrete to build a freaking wall. Time after time denied. Or even the fact that there was military people on the airplane in Italy, less than 3.5 hours away, that were ready to go. Somebody gave the order to stand down, and we being the American people, have never heard who actually gave that order. And the bottom line is, there's really only two people who could have. It had to either come from Hillary, or it should have had to have come from the person that is supposed to be holding the office of president. Now, based on memos that have been released, it would certainly appear as if it was actually Valerie Jarrett who gave the stand-down order. But based on several other memos, it would appear as though Valerie Jarrett is actually acting as president anyway. So, if you didn't know it, Valerie Jarrett is actually our president. Congratulations. Let's not let the whitewash continue. Let's go ahead and call attention to Benghazi each and every time. If somebody tries to say, oh, it had something to do with the video, let's already prove that even the administration had backed away from that story. That narrative no longer flies. One of the most clever things I heard somebody say in regards to it is, congratulations, it took this long for the New York Times to figure out how to spell Benghazi. Maybe in about this much time again, they'll learn to report the truth from Benghazi. They're just now catching up with that false narrative that was put out. It's actually pretty clever if you'd actually heard it. But the point being, there are issues here that are in play. Those issues are simply that Hillary Clinton is not qualified to be President of the United States. She wasn't qualified to be Secretary of State. She wasn't qualified to be a senator from the state of New York. She got that gig anyway. But when it comes down to it, there are allegations that are still going around that she was involved with covering stuff up for people that worked for her State Department. Just all over the place. You can find links to the story at the Tap Into the Truth Facebook page if you'd like to check it out there. Another big story that seemed to be gaining a lot of traction today in the social media arenas was the reemergence of the eligibility issue as well. Now, as most of you probably know, the birthers, try to figure out, birther. It's a great name, isn't it? It's right up there with truther. It's funny how folks like to slap conspiratorial labels on people when they really don't want to deal with the subject matter at hand. Well, evidently, the qualification, the eligibility issue is still in play in the Alabama court. The question of whether or not Barack Obama's name should have been allowed on the ballot there is something that is still moving forward. The fact that we know that the birth certificates that have been released, both long and short form, every expert that's taking a look at it says it's easily a fraud. This leads to the question of why we haven't challenged it any sooner. ultimately here, why don't we get to the bottom of this? It's time that we do. And here's the bottom line. It needs to be dealt with, and it needs to be finalized once and for all. The issue needs to be put to rest. And it's this simple. If he's not a citizen, then he's not the president. Nothing that he has signed is law. And Joe Biden doesn't get to automatically move into the seat either. Joe Biden ran on a fraudulent ticket. The rightful person to take over until the next election can be held should be the Speaker of the House. And ladies and gentlemen, given where the current Speaker, Mr. John Boehner, is with how he wants to attack conservatives at the moment, I wouldn't be really happy about that. So I'm not campaigning for John Boehner. I would still say that the proper person to take over, heaven help us, had that happened, if it was when Nancy Pelosi was still in charge, it still would have been her by virtue of being Speaker of the House. Because at the very least, she legitimately won her election. At the very least, John Boehner's legitimately won his election. I'm not happy with either one of those choices. I'm a little happier with John than I would have been with Nancy. But automatically, everything that he signed would be null and void. And you couldn't just say, okay, we'll have the next person sign it instead, and there you go. And it wouldn't work that way. It would have to pass through Congress again. Because it's all fraudulent to that point. Every last bit of it. Fraudulent. That would automatically mean Obamacare goes away. Yay, victory. But on the other hand, if there's not an eligibility issue, if he really, really was born in Hawaii, then why the heck can't we just get the actual evidence? Why wouldn't Obama want this taken care of anyway? Seriously, why wait so long, and then why put out fraudulent birth certificates knowing that people would be able to check it out? I mean, it includes names of places that didn't exist at the time it would have been issued. It's obvious forgery. There's no two cents about it. This isn't tinfoil hat time either. This is take a look at it, then look at the history of the people and places involved. In a lot of ways, as far as how citizenship is derived here in the States, there'd be some question marks even if Barack had been born in Hawaii as to whether or not he would have been granted citizenship, because number one, his father was not a citizen, never was, and number two, by American standards, the marriage to Barack's mother would have never been legal here anyway, would have never been recognized, because he was already married to somebody back in Kenya. So there's some legal wrangling that an argument could be made that he was never deserving of citizenship, even if he had been born here. No legal marriage. You know, it's a stretch, and I'm not saying that we should claim that. And I'm not even saying that I don't believe he's necessarily a citizen. But what I am saying is the issue needs to be settled and dealt with. And it needs to be done before his second term is up. Because if that can't be squared away by then, why, how, what is going to be done to undo the mess that we've all had to endure as a result of fraud? That needs to be dealt with. And I know a lot of people are all like, blah, 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 blah. But it really does. The issue really needs to be resolved once and for all. If he's not a citizen, he's not the president. Nothing that he has ever signed is law. Joe Biden could not be president either because he was involved in helping to commit the fraud. Should probably be facing charges. Speaker of the House would have to finish out the current term. But, like I said, if he is a citizen, then the issue should be done. Now, why was this getting traction today in social media? Well, it's a story that showed up in a few places. I first saw it at the Western Center for Journalism, but there was a few other sites that was running the story as well. And that's that the former Hawaii election clerk, Tim Adams, has now signed an affidavit swearing that he was told by his supervisors in Hawaii that no long-form hospital-generated birth certificate existed for Barack Obama Jr. in Hawaii, and that neither Queens Medical Center nor Kopalana Medical Center in Honolulu had any record of Obama having been born in their medical facilities. Adams was employed at the City and County of Honolulu Elections Division from May 2008 through September 2008. His position there was Senior Elections Clerk, overseeing a group of 50 to 60 employees responsible for verifying the identity of voters at the absentee ballot office. It was in this capacity that Adams became aware of the search for Obama's birth certificate records. He was quoted as saying that during the course of his employment, Adams swears in the affidavit, which is also reviewable as Part 1 and Part 2. He says, quote, I became aware that many requests were being made to the City and County of Honolulu Elections Division, the Hawaii Office of Elections, and the Hawaii Department of Health from around the country to obtain a copy of then Senator Barack Obama's long-form hospital-generated birth certificate. As he inquired about the birth certificate, he said his supervisors told him that the records were not on file at the Hawaii Department of Health. Senior officials in the City and County of Honolulu Elections Division told him on multiple occasions that no Hawaii long-form hospital-generated birth certificate existed for Senator Obama in the Hawaii Department of Health. Adams' affidavit also reads that, quote, and there are no record that any such document had ever been on file in the Hawaii Department of Health or any other branch or department of the Hawaii government. Now that story hit. This guy, Tim Adams, I don't know what his beef is. I don't know if he's got a reason for being out there and wanting to say this stuff, other than wanting to tell the truth. If he's got another agenda, I don't know what it is. But this guy is now on the record swearing under oath, because you are under oath when you take the affidavit, you're attesting the same, that the long-form birth certificate, to the best of his knowledge, and according to his supervisors and superiors, who may have been motivated to try and protect Obama, they say, he says that they said, Hawaii never had it. Didn't exist. It's not there. Isn't it time we really got to the bottom of it? Isn't it past time? And I don't care if you like the guy or not. And, you know, if you do, Bless your heart. We need to know if this guy's pulled a fast one on us, don't we? I mean, the only reason I have questions about this at all is the fact that people have put out obvious fake birth certificates to try and fool the public. And they weren't even very good fakes. They didn't think anybody would look into it. Thought, okay, here you go. The very fact that he hasn't squashed this concerns me. And my line of thinking on this from the beginning was, if he is a citizen, the only other reason not to want to get this stuff out is the fact that maybe he received a financial aid fraudulently and claimed to be a foreign student. If he was doing that in college, then he would have a vested interest in possibly having some of his degrees taken from him for academic fraud, and be forced to pay back some of that scholarship assistance he got as a foreign student. But if this stays a big murky mystery, he protects himself from that type of legal action. Not that I necessarily think that any of these universities that he was involved with would really go after him, at least not as long as he is the face of the Democratic Party. But it does kind of open up the door to some interesting possibilities. So at this point, I think the possibility of academic fraud is a little mute. You're already making millions of dollars. You're ridiculously wealthy. You haven't had to spend any of your own money for over 5 years now. The tax paradigm has been sufficient. You could probably afford to pay these schools back if that's the case. So then that leaves us wondering, why not get the freaking truth out there unless you really are hiding something? Stop hiding. Never before in the history of this country have we allowed someone to get the nomination from a major party without unequivocally proving their citizenship and their status to hold the office. Now, our Constitution has basic requirements to hold the office. 35 years of age, natural-born citizen. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of requirements really there. Let's get to the bottom of it. Let's get it out there. Let's stop treating people that ask the questions like they're some kind of loon, and start asking the question ourselves, why is it instead of producing an authentic birth certificate, they'd rather just have you think the people asking to see the birth certificate are nuts? Because that's what they've been doing. They've been doing that a while now. Why are we letting them do that? I don't know. I can't tell you. But it seems to me like we shouldn't let that be the case. All right, going to go ahead and take another break right here, and then when we get back, we're going to talk a little bit about the new police chief in Detroit, how that's interesting compared to what the executive actions that Obama's taken plays in, and then we're going to talk about the joys of Obamacare as your policies should be starting to go into effect. At least if you had signed up last year by the deadline. Anyway, here's the break, and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Tap into the truth. Check us out at tapintothetruth.com for our latest blog post and for links to all of our past broadcasts. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and to follow us on Twitter. That's Tap Into the Truth.
Been bleached by the ocean water, well, waves and sun and sand surround her, and breaks been slow, so we just let go. We sit out under the mellow sounds of water in the shallows. Eyes be brown, be soft, be so nice. Time goes by, but we don't mind. Just reflections in our eyes as we stay. But they got no end to a perfect place. Sun goes down, blankets come out. We stay up till it's back around. Life breaks through at 1:45. In my arms, it's all I knew. We sit out on a daily occasion with a new set of rules and a trial temptation, contemplating life, then we laugh, we tried. This is where, well, we should be, miles from what they call big cities, exist on a beach, welcome bare feet. White sand beach and about 6 feet, with 8 friendly waves, kicked up by the beat.
Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. We are back. Thanks for staying with us. I am your ever so humble host, Tim Tapp, coming to you live from historic Roane County, Tennessee. I'd like to take this opportunity to remind everybody that the music you hear here during the bumper zone, utilizing the service of Magnatune. And one of the reasons why I really like Magnatune is, first of all, the licensing is taken care of. These artists are getting paid their royalties as they deserve. But the folks that are getting this are independent artists. They do not have the backing of a major label. And that's part of why I decided to utilize Magnatune. I like the idea of helping independent artists. And it's just that simple. Now, I also like to go ahead and remind everybody also that if you have not already checked out LadyPatriotSpace.com, please do so. The social media site is attempting to grow. It's becoming an extension of the Lady Patriot website. It was formerly Patriot Space. The Lady Patriots have taken over management. They're in the process of trying to revamp, update, upgrade. And part of what would really make that worthwhile to them is if they had a lot of new members. I have a membership there myself, and there are links to the Tap Into the Truth show at Blog Talk that can be found on almost every page there if you sign up. So naturally, I have a vested interest in you checking it out, because it makes it easier for you to find the show. But at any rate, I really do think it'll be worthwhile. They are still working on improving it, and they're working on building it, and I think they're going to turn it into something that is at least as successful as the lady-patriots.com website has been. But you know what? If that's not what you're into, if you're more of a hardcore Tea Party type, libertarian, looking for a social media website, then by all means check out teapartycommunity.com. Also a great social media website that is an alternative to Facebook. And in both places, they don't mind if you're putting up political posts. It's kind of the idea. If you're on Facebook, how many of you guys have friends that just get nuts if you post even just one or two political things? I've got a few. I've had some folks threaten to unfriend me because of all the political posts that I put up. But I do manage to keep enough personal stuff on the personal account that they haven't done that just yet. At any rate, really want to encourage you to check out both of them, actually. Get a membership at both. They're great social media networks, and if you're conservative, you'll fit right in both of them, and it'll be great. If you are a troll, however, well, they'll figure that out quick enough, and you'll find yourself no longer eligible for posting. Let's go ahead and get to the next topic, shall we? We're already starting to run a little long. I talked a little longer in that first segment than what I had planned to. So let's take a look at what's going on in Detroit. James Craig took over the office of Chief of Police just this past summer. Now, for a lot of folks that tend to think that that's not very long, but he's already making waves in Detroit. A reorganization of the police force in the bankrupt metropolis has resulted in a higher clearance rate in murder cases, and the murder rate dropped almost 14% in 2013 from its two-decade high in 2012. However, Craig has some advice for his fellow citizens in Motor City if they really want to drop crime. He says to arm yourself. He was quoted as saying just recently, if more citizens were armed, criminals would think twice about attacking them. He said that Thursday, for the record. Urban police chiefs are typically in favor of gun control or reluctant to discuss the issue. But Craig, this past Thursday, was candid about how he's changed his mind. Quote, when we look at the good community members who have concealed weapon permits, the likelihood they'll shoot is based on a lack of confidence in the police department. Now, Craig also said at the press conference at the police headquarters that he thinks more Detroit citizens feel safer, thanks in part to a 7% drop in violent crime in 2013. And naturally, you would feel a little bit safer if you had a drop in crime. Why wouldn't you? Craig wasn't always in favor of carry permits, though. While serving in Los Angeles, where permits are issued on a notoriously miserly, and some would add arbitrary manner, Craig thought that disarmament was the answer. It wasn't until he went to a carry-friendly jurisdiction that he understood the difference. Craig said that he started believing that legal gun ownership can deter crime when he became police chief in Portland, Maine, back in 2009. Quote, coming from California, Craig was on the Los Angeles police force for 28 years. Now, coming from California, where it takes an act of Congress to get a concealed weapon permit, I got to Maine, where they give out lots of concealed carries. And I had a stack of concealed carry weapon permits I was denying. That was my orientation. But I changed my orientation real quick. Maine is one of the safest places in America. Clearly, suspects knew that good Americans were armed. Now, it's not the first time that Craig has endorsed carry permits. 2 weeks ago, the Detroit News noted that he told a local radio show that responsibly armed citizens act as a deterrent in a city that can clearly use one. Even though the murder rate has dropped, Detroit has as many homicides in 2013 as New York City, which has more than 10 times its population. Chicago had only 29 more than Detroit, despite having nearly 4 times the population. It's worth noting that both New York City and Chicago have extraordinarily ridiculous restrictions on gun ownership, let alone carry permits. And Chicago routinely ranks among the worst American metropolitan areas for homicides and violent crime. At least one recent study suggests that Craig hits the nail on the head. A long-range study by Quinnipiac University economist not sure why economists were doing this, but at any rate, show that the states with more restrictions on firearm ownership and carry permits had higher murder rates by guns than gun-friendly states, and suggests that increasing restrictions on concealed carry permits pushes the murder rates up, not down. It also showed that assault weapon bans had no effect on murder rates. Perhaps more police chiefs will change their orientation with this information at hand. State legislatures should get ahead of that curve. And, just for the record, let's not forget that increased restrictions on gun ownership can be bad for the economy as well as for the crime rate. Certainly it will be in Colorado, as Magpul Industries announced today that it is relocating its operations to Wyoming and its headquarters into Texas. Of course, the company is relocating manufacturing, distribution, and shipping operations to Cheyenne, Wyoming. They're leasing a 58,000 square foot manufacturing and distributing facility during the construction of a 100,000 square foot build-to-suit factory in the Cheyenne Business Parkway. The Wyoming relocation is being completed with support from Governor Matt Mead, the Wyoming Business Council, and Cheyenne Leads. Magpul is moving its corporate headquarters to Texas. 3 north central Texas sites are under final consideration, and the transition to the Texas headquarters will begin as soon as the facility is selected. The Texas relocation is being accomplished with support from Governor Rick Perry and the Texas Economic Development Corporation. Now, Magpul made the decision to relocate in March of 2013 and has proceeded on an aggressive but deliberate path. The dual moves will be carried out in a manner that ensures operation and supply chain that will not be interrupted and that their loyal customers will not be affected. The company, of course, began a nationwide search for a new base of operations after legislation was enacted in Colorado that dramatically limits the sale of firearm accessories, the core of Magpul's business. Magpul plans in initially transitioning 92% of its current workforce outside of Colorado within 12 to 16 months and will remain only limited operations in Colorado. Moving operations to states that support our culture of individual liberties and personal responsibilities is important. This according to Richard Fitzpatrick, the Chief Executive Officer for Magpul Industries. This relocation will also improve business operations and logistics as we utilize the strengths of Texas and Wyoming in our expansion. Now, I'll go even further as to say that the simple fact, those statistics we were talking about from Quinnipiac University, you can expand it outside of the United States. You can look worldwide. In places that have higher per capita gun ownership, you have lower per capita violent crime. Not just murders, but violent crimes across the board. In places where you have more restrictive gun laws, you have the opposite. You can look at any example that you want. Pick any place. I promise you the statistics will ferret out the same. This is not a case of statistics lying or people being confused. It's simply a matter of what's fact is fact. Gun control doesn't work. Responsible gun ownership does. But don't tell that to the Obama administration or any gun controlling or administration that may come after. Because After failing to strengthen background checks on gun buyers through Congress, the Obama administration today announced pending executive action on the matter, focused mainly on mental health issues that would allow the government to get around certain privacy laws on the books in order to obtain more information. The new restrictions would take the form of regulations from the Department of Justice and the Department of Health and Human Services. One of the regulations would seek to gain information previously withheld because of the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, aka HIPAA, which protects medical privacy. Now, if you work in a doctor's office, you're very familiar with HIPAA. If you've tried to get a doctor's office to fax information to a phone number on your behalf, then you're well aware of the hoops you have to jump through in order for them to be able to release that information. So you're aware of HIPAA. But now the Obama administration, under the guise of looking out for you, wants to abandon HIPAA because, of course, they're above the law, aren't they, boys and girls? Never mind the fact that there are still guns popping up at crime scenes from Fast and Furious. That's just a made-up scandal. It's not real. Is there any law that this administration thinks it actually has to follow? I'm beginning to wonder. They don't seem to be particularly interested in any of them. At any rate, too many Americans have been severely injured or lost their lives as a result of gun violence, according to a White House release that came out today, Friday. While the vast majority of Americans who experience a mental illness are not violent, in some cases, when persons with a mental illness do not receive the treatment they need, the result can be tragedies such as homicide or suicide. The administration's Friday post-holiday announcement came while Barack Hussein, the occupier Obama, was still on vacation in Hawaii. In stark contrast to Obama's first executive actions on guns, which were announced in the White House ceremony, Friday's news dump announcements have also traditionally been used to try to avoid media scrutiny. No surprise there, except for the folks that have ignored the patterns. Federal regulations do not require congressional authorization, but must go through a period of public comment and review before being enacted. The Justice Department regulations would clarify who is prohibited from possessing a firearm under federal law for reasons of mental health. The White House says that terminology in federal law is ambiguous. Translation, it's intentionally unclear so that we can say it means whatever we want it to mean. Examples given by the Justice Department are the statutory terms committed to a mental institution and adjudicated as a mental defective, to include involuntary inpatient and outpatient commitments. Anyone found incompetent to stand trial or not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect, someone lacking mental responsibility or deemed insane, and persons found guilty but mentally ill. Not sure exactly what parts of those are ambiguous. Seems like most of those are pretty straightforward, but perhaps the administration officials seek to clarify, because under those grounds, many of them would be ineligible to own firearms. Just saying. quote, "We are talking an important common sense." Don't think that word means what they think it means. At least I haven't seen them demonstrate any common sense. What about you? Anyway, sorry. We're taking an important common sense step to clarify the federal firearms regulations, which will strengthen our ability to keep dangerous weapons out of the wrong hands. Attorney General Eric Holder said in a statement. The gun-walking Eric Holder's worried about the guns ending up in the wrong hands? Really? Really? Sorry. That is almost as funny as the global warming scientists going to Antarctica to count how little ice there is, but needing to be rescued because they got stuck in all the ice. Almost as funny as that. Not quite. I gotta admit, that's a little more funny. Because there's nothing funny about people being killed because of the stupid and illegal actions of an attorney general. It's funny that you would talk about keeping dangerous weapons out of the wrong hands after intentionally putting dangerous weapons into the wrong hands. At any rate, Attorney General Eric Holder continued by saying, "This step will provide clear guidance on who is prohibited from possessing firearms under federal law for reasons related to mental health, thereby enabling America's brave law enforcement and public safety officials to better protect the American people and ensure the safety of our homes and communities." I'll be willing to cooperate and help out our brave law enforcement, but I'm going to raise an eyebrow anytime you start talking about our public safety officials. This is a bit of a broader term and typically means politicians and bureaucrats. And I feel more comfortable taking the advice of Detroit's chief of police and let's protect our own homes and communities, shall we? The Department of Health and Human Services wants to ensure states are submitting more information on individuals through the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, or NICS. Thus far, the health privacy laws have gotten in the way, so the HHS wants to eliminate this barrier by giving certain HIPAA-covered entities and express permission to submit to the background check system the limited information necessary to help keep guns out of potentially dangerous hands. The Government Accountability Office found in 2012 that 17 states had submitted fewer than 10 records of individuals to the federal background check system who were prohibited from buying guns for mental health reasons. There's a strong public safety need for this information to be accessible to the NICS, and some states are currently underreporting or not reporting certain information to the NICS at all. Health and Human Services Secretary Ms. Kathleen Sebelius said in a statement that this proposed rulemaking is carefully balanced to protect and preserve individuals' privacy interest, the patient-provider relationship, and the public's health and safety. What part of it actually protects privacy interest? Again, I don't think that word means what you think it means. And I make that statement in regards to anyone that works for this administration, especially those that work for, the NSA. No, just for example. And by the way, let me go ahead and give a special shout out to the guys in the NSA whom I know are listening to this show. Thanks for listening. You guys probably are the most loyal listeners I have. So, thanks, guys. Hope you're finding it entertaining. Health and Human Services began looking at the matter of mental health last April. The regulation would not prohibit someone seeking help for mental illness from buying a firearm. Further, the White House says the rule won't require reporting routine mental health visits. Last year, the Democrat-controlled Senate rejected a proposal backed by Obama to expand background checks. The legislative push came in response to the December 2012 elementary school massacre in Newtown, Connecticut. A shooting occurred earlier that year at a movie theater in Colorado. In both cases, and in others, the accused shooters have had mental health problems. They also failed to mention the fact that in both those cases, and in several others, the shooter happened to be a confirmed, avowed, progressive Democrat that supported gun control. And I suppose they were trying to demonstrate the need for gun control by going around and shooting people. I don't understand it. But I suppose if I did understand that type of insanity, I would probably need a straitjacket and some medication as well. The most interesting thing here, though, is the fact that if you've been listening to this show, you've already heard me warning you that taking over health care, as the government is trying to do, that Obamacare is just a jumping off point to start making that happen, is also the means for gun control. That's why, among the questionnaires that you must now answer, as required by Obamacare, is whether or not you own a firearm. What does that have to do with you getting treatment for the flu, or pneumonia, or having to have an appendectomy? Do you own a gun? Do you have a gun at home? Yes. And I'm likely to use it on you, Doc, if you screw up my operation. So either A, do my operation right, or B, screw it up so bad that I don't have a chance to go home and get it. That's the only reason I can think of why a doctor would ever need to know if I have a gun. Gun control was and is in play. And trust me, when they want to come in and start playing with what the definitions of mental illness and what a mental defect happens to be, traits for libertarians and conservatives are probably going to hit high on the list of mental defects that must have gun ownership banned. Because typically those are the folks most likely to own a firearm anyway. Now, with all that having been said, I'm going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we will talk about what's going on with Obamacare, as there were reports today of confusion. Confusion about Obamacare? Say it ain't so. That can't be right. Let me double check that, and we'll get on with it right after the break. We'll be back. Stay with us. Tap into the truth. Check us out at tapintothetruth.com for our latest blog posts and for links to all of our past broadcasts. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and to follow us on Twitter. That's Tap Into the Truth.
Well, I'm moving out west now. They say there's never clouds, so I'm sitting just wishing I could be there somehow. So searched down to Byron Bay, it was my first place before sailing to ballet. Found myself in the Cayenne Peak, a board beneath my feet, saying, why should I leave? It's a journey. We drove out, fought breakdowns to make us who we are now. We're at peace with how we live. Pop dream baby got me down. So silent this plane flies, where it lands I begin my life. Pack some shoes and an extra line, 'cause I know I'll walk it this time. We'll go down, follow me, I'm set around how the world runs, but we do it pushing love, got no home now. Well, we try and live without, just keep flowing, going town to town. So searched down the Byron Bay, it was my first place.
All right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for staying with us. This is, of course, your ever so humble host, Tim Tapp, and I am so very glad that you are with us today. Thanks for listening. I do appreciate it. While you're at it, if I can ask just a few more small favors from you, would you please check out tapintothetruth.com, and while you're there, please scroll down near the bottom of the homepage and send me a message. Let me know what you think. If you like the show, if you like the website, if you don't like the show, if you don't like the website, if you've checked out the Facebook page, if you're following me on Twitter, and please go ahead and do those things if you don't care too awful bad. And while you're at it, let me know that you have. Want to hear back from you guys. And also remember, I am still waiting. It'll probably be, I'm going to extend it till roughly the last Sunday in January. That's when I would like to do the countdown show of listeners' determination of what you guys think are the biggest stories from 2013 that received the least amount of legitimate media coverage. Biggest stories that were underreported. That's what I'm looking for. So, check it out. Let me know what you think. Also, would like to go ahead and send a shout out to the news guy here at Spreaker, and thank him again for not only taking the time to check out the website, but for sending me a message and letting me know that there was a technical issue going on. I was able to get it fixed, and I do appreciate that. So, news guy, I said it in a previous broadcast, but still want to let everybody know thank you. And by the way, if you haven't checked out the news guy's podcast here, I recommend it. It's not half bad. Anyway, let's get on, as time is fleeting and has a way of getting away from you when you get on here and start talking, especially if you ramble on or as Bill O'Reilly would say, opine, the way I like to do. And I do tend to get on a bit. One of the biggest stories about Obamacare that was really circulating today is simply the fact that confusion is abounding in hospitals who are unable to verify healthcare plans. Surprise, surprise. On Thursday, sick people with Obamacare purchased insurance plans were absolutely crushed when hospital staff in Northern Virginia were unable to verify whether their plans were active. This was reported in the Daily Mail. They had no idea if my insurance was active or not, a coughing Maria Galvez told the Daily Mail in the Inova Healthplex facility in Springfield. It's not fair, you know. I signed up last week like I was supposed to. Galvez added that, quote, the people in there told me that since I didn't have an insurance card, I would be billed for the whole cost of the x-ray. That would be at a rate of over $500, by the way. Galvez, who purchased a bronze Obamacare plan for $450 a month, says she never received a bill. Her Obamacare plan brings with it a steep $5,500 per person deductible. $5,500 per person deductible at $450 a month on a bronze plan. Did you catch all that? But by the way, if you haven't received a bill yet, then you don't have the policy. You have to have paid for it before it will be in effect. Now, if you're fortunate enough to be one of these folks that your tax credit actually covers the totality of your monthly bill, your monthly dues, your cost of ownership of the policy. Okay, I'll stop, I promise. If you're fortunate enough that the government tax credit actually pays for your insurance in total, then you would not have received a bill. Not too many people are qualifying, though, for $400 or more a month. So, chances are, her policy isn't even in effect. But, I'll continue with the article. Another woman, whom the Daily Mail described as an African-American woman named Mary, who asked that her last name not be published, left the Inova Alexandria Hospital in Alexandria, Virginia, after she experienced similar frustration. I had chest pains last night, and they took me to the emergency room. They told me they were going to admit me, but when I told them I hadn't heard from my insurance company since I signed up, they changed their tune. Mary also added that, quote, why is this so complicated? I had my own private insurance last year, but they canceled me in November. I'm not sure which end is up. Well, Mary, welcome to the party, because I'm afraid there's a lot of folks in the exact same boat. When it comes to this stuff, it has intentionally been made difficult to navigate. And I do mean intentionally. That was the plan. I've said it before, I've said it many times, and I know I'm not the only person saying it. I don't know if I was one of the first. I do know I'm not the only one now. I do know I've been saying it for quite some time. But this plan was never intended to work. It was designed to fail. And it was designed to fail so miserably that you'd be willing to accept the single-payer system. That, in fact, some of you would come pleading for the single-payer system. In fact, In discussions with friend of the show, Dr. Sharon Schutz, she's been doing research on certain progressive social media sites, and they're hailing this as a great victory already because they know the American people aren't going to put up with it. See, they're in on this little secret. They know it's not meant to work. They want you confused, upset, frustrated, so that you'll just go along when they say, hey, we've got something better for you. At any rate, 6 million Americans lost their health insurance plans due to Obamacare after it was learned that Barack Obama's promise, if you like your plan, you can keep your plan, was dubbed the PolitiFact Lie of the Year. Chicago-based Dr. John Venatos told the Associated Press on Thursday he was seeing, quote, tremendous uncertainty and anxiety among Obamacare patients who think they've enrolled but have no insurance cards. According to the Wall Street Journal, half of the 2 million people who selected an Obamacare plan have yet to activate their health coverage by making their first premium payment. Now, all that being said, is anyone surprised? Does that come as a surprise to anyone who's actually been paying attention? You have to make your first payments before you get that. They send out bills very quickly. I know people that work in the same facility that I'm part of the management team at received bills this past week. I mean, you were supposed to be signed up for a deadline, but your policy isn't activated until you make your first payment. And like I said, almost nobody is qualifying to have their full premium cost covered by the instant tax credit, the subsidy. So then that leads to the question of, why are people so confused? Well, the answer is as simple in some cases as, why did people think they could show up at medical facilities the day after Obamacare first passed? Because once it passed Congress, it hadn't even been signed into law yet, and people started showing up at clinics and hospitals thinking their health care was going to be free then. People don't pay attention. People have been dumbed down. They're ignorant of what's actually going on. And while that may sound insulting, understand that ignorance simply means that you're not familiar with the information. You don't know what you need to know. Lots of times, that level of ignorance is not the fault of the ignorant. Being ignorant is not being stupid. Now, sometimes people are ignorant because they're stupid and wouldn't get it even if you explained it to them, but they don't mean the same thing. So please don't be insulted if I say you're ignorant. If I say you're stupid, be insulted. If I say you're ignorant, don't be insulted, at least not yet. I probably will get to you later. The point being that confusion is part of the desired effect. For those of you who are not already tired of being lied to, and for those of you who have not been lied to enough by this administration and the people who work for this administration, then prepare for the shock and awe of further confusion. What is the point of this confusion? Again, so that the American people will clamor for something else. They can get you hooked well enough that you can expect the government to take care of this stuff for you. Then what stops you from just going full on 100% socialized medicine? Obamacare as it exists now is unsustainable, even if you could make it work and it could survive every legal challenge that it faces. I don't think it's going to make it through the legal challenges myself. Shouldn't have made it through the legal challenges that it already has survived. But in the end, I don't think it's going to make it. But, health reform, if you really are interested in health care, health reform doesn't start with insurance anyway. This idea of the health insurance reform won't cut emergency room visits either. When you think about it, one of Barry's biggest promises, one of his constant refrains during the battle over Obamacare, trying to get it passed through the Senate in the first place, well, through Congress as a whole, it wasn't just the Senate, and the House was involved too. But one of his refrains during that particular battle had been that expanding coverage would reduce inefficiency in the system. Now, I have never once seen expanding government bureaucracy reduce inefficiency. If anybody out there has an example of that having happened, please let me know. Shoot me an email at ttap@tapintothetruth.com. If you have a legitimate example of a case where expanding the government bureaucracy has helped to reduce inefficiency in the system. In particular, he was often citing the expensive emergency room visits as something that reform could help reduce. But you know what? As it turns out, Obamacare, just like Romney Care before it, is actually likely to increase. That's right. Dramatic pause there. Increase emergency room visits. Maybe even substantially. Why would I say that? Well, you see, MIT, they kind of did this little report, and they did a little study in Oregon, and they recently had it published in the Harvard study on Medicaid users. In this report, it said that adults who are covered by Medicaid use emergency rooms 40% more than those in similar circumstances who do not have health insurance. Now, according to this new study that was co-authored by an MIT economist, this study sheds empirical light on the inner workings of healthcare in the U.S. Emergency room visits are many times more expensive than primary care visits for similar treatment. This is why both before and after the health insurance reform was passed, politicians cited reducing emergency room visits as a reason the law was a good idea. Now, WonkBlog cites two examples today: Republican Governor Rick Snyder and Health and Human Services Secretary Sebelius, who said back in 2009, quote, "Our health care system has forced too many uninsured Americans to depend on the emergency rooms for the care they need." But perhaps the person who's made this case more than anyone else is, of course, Obama himself. He has repeatedly said over the past 6 years that reform would reduce ER visits, thereby creating greater efficiency in the system. Therefore saving us money. Now, I've got 17 examples here. November 8th, 2013, quote, You know, one of the reasons to do this is, I have said this before, sometimes people don't fully appreciate it. We already pay for the health care of people who don't have insurance. We just pay for the most expensive version, which is when they go to the emergency room. On October 30th, 2013, quote, "We pay more in premiums and taxes when Americans without good insurance visit the emergency room. We get taxed." October 1st, 2013, quote, "We should not have a system in which people are regularly going to the emergency room, driving up costs for everyone else because they haven't acted responsibly." Because they haven't acted responsibly. Coming from Obama, that's almost as funny as the climate change scientists getting stuck in the ice. Stuck in the ice that wasn't supposed to be there because they were going to study how much of it had melted. And it's summer in Antarctica. Anyway, I'll continue, sorry. April 30th, 2013, quote, "We would rather have people getting regular checkups than going to the emergency room because they don't have health insurance. If we keep that in mind, then we're going to be able to drive down costs. We're going to be able to improve efficiencies in the system." July 17th, 2012. "If you don't have health care, then we're going to help you get it. And the only people who may have a problem with this law are folks who can afford health care but aren't buying it. Wait until they get sick and then are going to the emergency room and expect everyone else to pick up the tab. That's not responsibility." June 28th, 2012. "When uninsured people who can afford coverage get sick and show up at the emergency room for care, the rest of us end up paying for their care in the form of higher premiums." Now, he made speeches all the way to January 25th of 2007, and I'm not really going to waste any more time going into them because they all say basically the same thing. Obviously, however, if Obamacare raises the number of emergency room visits by, say 40%, which seems a fairly conservative number from expectations, if Obamacare recipients are actually able to get their coverage instituted, well, that isn't going to be saving us any money. Even if insured visits cost less on average than uninsured visits, it wouldn't still not be a move in the right direction, according to the president. There were a few people pointing out back in 2010 that this method of cost control was probably illusionary. Massachusetts, which served as a model for Obamacare, also saw increased emergency room visits after the, quote, reform. So, ultimately, this just kind of demonstrates the fact of another lie that we were told. Because I'm sorry, there's no way that Obama and company weren't aware of the numbers. These are statistics that existed for a while. This new study, the fact that it comes from MIT and was just recently done, will probably help to legitimize this point when it comes to dealing with the liberals. But conservatives on this matter were already convinced that this was a bad idea. They don't need any legitimizing to the issue. We understand the point. We know the point. The point is simple. The point is obvious. Obamacare will not save money. Obamacare will not provide quality health care. Obama will not provide affordable health care. It will provide either an opportunity for the American people to coalesce together, stop dividing themselves up, left, right, conservative, liberal, pull together and stand together with a single voice, tell the people in D.C. that we're not going to take this anymore, or, and I hate that this is even an option, but it could also actually work the way the so-called progressives want it to. People could become so frustrated that en masse they decided it'd be better to just let the government do it all. I hope and pray that that's not the way it goes. But I have to admit, at the moment, it is a possibility. So that's the two big things today from the Obamacare front. And, people keep wanting to talk about Obamacare to the point that I'm sure a lot of folks listening to shows like this one probably tired of hearing about Obamacare. But we talk about it because it's still a big deal, and it will continue to be a big deal until it is either repealed or invalidated through Barack being determined to no longer be the president because he was never eligible to be in the first place. Something like that happens. Then it goes away. Unless, of course, the Washington power structure tries to prevent that meaningful change. Say, oh, well, he was still president when he signed it. No, he wasn't. If he was ineligible, he was never the president. He was just a con man who defrauded you. In order to sign something into law, you must actually be the president. Not a fraud, not someone who's ineligible. The president. Of course, I told you how I stand on that already. Just a little quick side note. I'm going to add on a bonus story because we've been watching it. This came across the wire. I came across it today, but it was actually first published back on the 2nd. It's an Associated Press story. We talked about the possibility of this happening on a previous broadcast. Well, it actually has happened now. The California Supreme Court granted a law license Thursday to a man who has lived in the United States illegally for 2 decades. A ruling that advocates hope will open the door to millions of immigrants seeking to enter other professions such as medicine, accounting, and teaching. The unanimous decision means that Sergio-Garcia, who attended law school and passed the state bar exam while working in a grocery store and on farms, can begin practicing law immediately. It's the latest in a string of legal and legislative victories for people who are in the country without permission. Other successes include the creation of a path to citizenship for many young people and the granting of driver's licenses in some states. Quote, "This is a bright new day in California history and bodes well for the future." That from the Coalition of Humane Immigrant Rights of Los Angeles. The court sided with the state officials in the case, which pitted them against the White House over a 1996 federal law that bars people who are in the United States illegally from receiving professional licenses from government agencies or with the use of public monies unless state lawmakers vote otherwise. Now, Bill Hing, a law professor at the University of San Francisco, said that the court made clear the only reason it granted Garcia's request is that California recently approved a law that specifically authorizes the state to give law licenses to immigrants who are here illegally. The new law, inspired by Garcia's situation, took effect Wednesday. It was unclear how many people would qualify to practice law under the ruling and whether it would influence other states. Of course, we know it will. Legislatures and governors in more conservative states, such as Alabama and Arizona, are likely to be less receptive to the idea. You think? Garcia, who plans to be a personal injury attorney, great, he's going to be an ambulance chaser. Good job. Anyway, planning to be a personal injury attorney in his hometown of Chico? Really? It's got to be a typo here in the article. I'll look it up in a bit and see if I can find a listing of his actual hometown, because I've got a typo in this article here. Sorry. At any rate, no disrespect intended to the hometown of Mr. Garcia. He said that he hoped that the decision would serve as a beacon of hope to others in the same situation. He can hang up a shingle and be his own company. That was quoted from Hing, who represented the State Bar Association in the case. Once he does that, a client can retain him as a lawyer. But some questions remain unresolved, such as whether Garcia can appear in federal court or in other states. Federal law makes it illegal for law firms to hire him. Chief Justice Tangkatel Sakawi, who wrote the opinion, said that the new state law removed any barrier to Garcia's quest for a license, and no other federal statute purports to preclude a state from granting a license to practice law to an undocumented immigrant. Garcia, who is now 36, arrived in the United States as a teenager to pick almonds with his father, who was a permanent legal resident. His father filed a petition in 1994 seeking an immigration visa for his son. It was accepted in 1995, but because of the backlog of visa applications from people from Mexico, Garcia has never received a visa number. He applied for citizenship in 1994 and is still working towards that goal. The U.S. Department of Justice argued that Garcia was barred from receiving his law license because the court's entire budget comes from the public treasury. That would be a violation of the federal mandate that no public money be used to grant licenses to people who are in the country without permission. Assistant U.S. Attorney Daniel Tenney, who argued the case, did not immediately return any calls seeking comment. The Obama administration's position in the case came as a surprise to some, since the White House has shielded from deportation people who were brought to the U.S. illegally as children, provided they also graduated from high school, kept a clean criminal record, and met other conditions. At a hearing in September, a majority of the state Supreme Court justices appeared reluctant to grant Garcia a license under current state and federal law, saying that they were prohibited from doing so unless the legislature acted. Garcia worked in the fields and at a grocery store before attending community college. He has become a paralegal went to law school and passed the bar exam on his first try. His effort to get licensed was supported by state bar officials and California's Attorney General, who argued that citizenship is not a requirement to receive a California law license. Two other similar cases are pending in Florida and New York, and the Obama administration has made it clear it will oppose bar entry to immigrants unless each state passes its own laws allowing the practice. California Attorney General Kamala Harris supported Garcia's petition and applauded the ruling. Nick Pacillo, a spokesman for Harris, said California's success has hinged on the hard work and self-sufficiency of immigrants like Sergio. Thursday's decision is the latest example of changes in immigration policy happening at the state level, while an effort to achieve a broad federal overhaul stalls in the House. Oh, translation, those mean old Republicans. California and 9 other states last year agreed to grant driver's license to people in the country illegally, bringing the total to 13 states. That according to the National Conference of State Legislatures. Nevada and Maryland began taking applications this week. 4 states, Colorado, Minnesota, Oregon, and New Jersey, last year offered in-state college tuition to residents who are here illegally, joining California and 10 others. Now, these changes in attitudes toward immigration notwithstanding, this case seems unique. I kind of have mixed feelings on this myself. I don't know how you guys feel. In fact, I would love to hear from you guys. If you want to send a message, want to hop in the chat room and send a quick IM, or shoot me an email at ttap@tapintothetruth.com, or just go to tapintothetruth.com and go down near the bottom of the homepage, send me a message that way. I'd love to know what you think, quite honestly. You see, on the one hand, you have a guy who obviously, he came here as a kid, he's trying to become a citizen, he wants to become a professional. This guy wants part of the American dream. He was brought here as a kid by his father. He doesn't have legal status, not through any fault of his own, but because of backlog of the government. It's government failures. It's the bureaucracy that has kept him from having the opportunity at this point to not only have an actual legal status, but also, at this point, most likely from actually just being a citizen already. So with that in mind, this kid's worked hard. He's worked his butt off. Had to have. How are you paying for law school working in the almond fields and at a grocery store without absolutely just busting your hump? It ain't happening. This guy's worked hard. I'm going to stop calling him a kid. He's 26 years old now. Or was it 36? Anyway, he's not a kid. He's worked hard. He's earned it. And I can't think of a reason other than the fact of his legal status why this would even be an issue. But it does keep coming back to that legal status. And if you're not here legally, how can you be allowed to practice law? You've been breaking it almost the entire time you were here. Now, as a casual observer from the outside, if you didn't read details, if you didn't go into this story, if you didn't know that it's actually the bureaucracy's fault he doesn't have a legal status, then it'd be real easy to just shut your eyes to it and say, oh, no, this just can't happen. This isn't acceptable. Because in a world of absolutes and black and whites, then yeah, no illegals should be allowed to practice law anywhere in the country. But we don't live in a world of absolutes. We don't live in a world where everything is black and white. There are some things that are. Okay? I mean, I'm not over in the la-la land of liberals where everything's a shade of gray. There are certain things that are right and wrong. There are certain things where morality should be your compass, and you should have a moral compass, and you should let a higher power, a spiritual side be your guide and help you in making those determinations. Those things are true. It's real. It exists. I'm all about it. But this right here is not strictly black and white. It's the government's fault. He doesn't have a legal status. So should that be held against him? To be fair, I don't see how you can. It wouldn't be right. This kid's not... Okay, I said I was going to stop calling him a kid, didn't I? Sorry. This gentleman is not some parasite. He's not some leech. He's not some guy who snuck across the border to try and take advantage of social programs. This guy came here to work in the first place. This guy is absent a legal status here because of our government bureaucracy not moving particularly fast. This guy is someone who's come in here and tried to do everything the right way, and he's still trying to work on citizenship. So that changes my thought process on this matter just a little bit, and I would hope that would for most of you. You know, in the event that you happen to be against it on principle. What principle's more? Somebody who actually wants to come in here and have a meaningful impact on society? I mean, I really do wish he wasn't going to be an ambulance chaser. But other than that, he's tried to do it the right way based on the information that's been presented. So, maybe California actually got this right? I mean, the first clue here should be the fact that the Obama administration is arguing against it. Why would that be, do you think? Could it be for a similar reason why certain judicial nominees in the state of Florida are being rejected? For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, it seems that civil rights leaders are showing their true colors again in Georgia over judicial appointments. Now, according to the Politico, Barry, the occupier Obama, is upset Representative John Lewis, a Democrat from Georgia, and other, quote, civil rights leaders by ignoring their input in picking 4 nominees to fill vacancies on the federal bench in Georgia's Northern District. Lewis and fellow Presidential Medal of Freedom winner Joseph Lowery and C.T. Vivian were expected to ask Obama to withdraw his nominees, a demand that is unlikely to be met amid concerns about the judge's records and convictions on matters of importance to African Americans. Now, the 3 appointees in question are Mark Cohen, who was the lead defense attorney in challenges to Georgia's voter ID law, Michael Boggs, a state judge who, as a member of the state legislature, once voted to keep in place the Confederate-themed Georgia state flag, Eleanor Ross, a female state judge who is black and a Republican. And then the fourth nominee, who's not being specifically contested by Lewis, is Lee Martin May, a female trial lawyer, excuse me, who's white, but at least she's a Democrat. Why is Ross such a troublesome choice for Lewis? Miss Eleanor Ross? Well, according to Joe Saunders, who was writing for BizPac Review, U.S. Representative John L. Lewis is accusing the president of selling out his political base by naming Eleanor Ross as a federal judge. She is literally not politically correct enough. Since most black women are Democrats, Lewis reasons any black woman Obama appoints should be a Democrat too. Now, Saunders points out the obvious irony. The first black president names the first black woman to the federal bench in Georgia, and civil rights leaders who've made skin color a primary way of judging people for decades are furious because she's not their kind. It's always been absurd how the only politically acceptable black is a liberal progressive Democrat black. If you dare to think for yourself as a black conservative, there's open season on your hide. It is horribly appalling how these black civil rights leaders will allow white liberal progressives to viciously attack blacks who are conservatives and not say a word about racism or discrimination. Actually, it's not just appalling, it's deeply disturbing. Because in the case of Judge Ross, qualifications mean nothing, and her color is dismissed because she did not follow the crowd. Representative John Lewis and his ilk demonstrate their self-serving personal agenda of denigrating anyone who has a dissenting voice. The hypocrisy of how the media relates to black conservative Republicans is so very blatant. This case also clearly demonstrates who is raging the real war on women. The Democrats who want to keep black women in their place on the political plantation. It's sad. After all, God did give us all a brain, and as Americans, we have free will and choice in how we live our lives. But for liberal progressives, you're not allowed to choose the political philosophy that best suits your life, especially if you're black. Of course, they'll fight for your right to kill your unborn baby. Now, I don't know about you, but the whole mindless slimming thing, it's not for me. And I hope most of you will reject it, but that's the exact same reason why the Obama administration is against our friend, the illegal immigrant, Sergio-Garcia, getting his license. This guy came here, wants to do it the right way, wants to go about it the right way, wants to do things in a fashion that would make him here legally, wants to become a citizen, wants to be a productive member of society, if you can call an ambulance chaser, personal injury lawyer productive. I guess they make enough money, it's productive enough. Certainly would be a taxpayer, but he wants to earn his keep. He's already demonstrated a willingness to work hard. That indicates he might be conservative in nature, which actually most Hispanics typically tend to be pretty conservative. Very family-oriented people. Good folks. But you see, he's supposed to be a minority. And he's supposed to be in the progressive camp. If you're not one of them, they can't support you. In fact, they have to find reasons to try and destroy you. Ask Clarence Thomas. Ask Alan Keyes. Ask Colonel Allen West. Ask Herman Cain. Ask Michelle Bachmann. As a woman who's not firmly in the Democrat camp. It's not enough just to let these people leave the reservation. They must be destroyed. Because you certainly can't have other folks in the same block they keep trying to separate everybody into, thinking that it would be okay for them to be a conservative too. That would just be bad. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we are running long. Thankfully, I have the time available, but I don't want to take up any more of your time than is absolutely necessary. So, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will close up today's show. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Tap into the truth. Check us out at tapintothetruth.com for our latest blog posts and for links to all of our past broadcasts. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and to follow us on Twitter. That's Tap Into the Truth right here.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Thanks for staying with us. I always appreciate it. Hearing this particular song, I don't know what it is. It kind of makes me think about Hillary Clinton, too. I have Hillary Clinton on the brain today. I'm not particularly happy about that either, for the record. At any rate, definitely want to thank everybody for listening today. Thanks for being part of the show. Hope that everybody will take the opportunity to check out tapintothetruth.com. Please follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook. You can find the links at the top of the homepage for both those. Also would like to take the opportunity to ask you if you are interested in possibly starting your own web page. Please go to tapintothetruth.com and click on one of the iPage banners and check out what they have to offer. iPage is a great website host. Provide all kinds of server and security capabilities. And if you do decide to buy a website, and utilize their services there. Part of the proceeds, if you use those banners, will actually go to help fund the show here. Very small. It won't be much, but every little bit helps. And in fact, if you'd like to donate to the show to try and help keep the website up, because that costs money to keep the show going, because that costs money to help upgrade the show so that we can bring better audio quality and bring higher quality of banter, conversation, get somebody on here helping me to produce so we can elevate the show completely. Because I would love to make the show better. I've got great ideas, but all of them takes cash flow. If you'd like to make a donation, you can do that from the website as well. Won't be tax deductible or anything like that, but if you're feeling generous, if you like what you hear, and you're willing to help, please do so. If you would like to become an actual sponsor, also go ahead and send me a message, and we can talk about that as well. I would be more than happy to entertain any discussions, any ideas. Sponsorship goes a long way towards a program like this and would open up a few other doorways as far as getting the program out there. With all that having been said, that's enough shameless promotion. I'm ready to move on now. We've actually covered a lot of different topics today, and all of these were important stories from the past week. I'd like to take this opportunity to remind you that Tap Into the Truth will be on Blog Talk on Sunday. We'll get started there at 3 p.m. Eastern. And we'll be talking about a few other issues that go into the realm of recapping this past week. Don't have any special guests slated at this point, but still have some hopes for a last-minute addition. We will be having Miss Leonard on next Sunday show, not this coming Sunday, but a week from Sunday on January the 12th. She is another candidate running for the Republican nomination for the U.S. Senate from the state of Tennessee. One of the major contenders that is challenging Lamar Alexander in the primary. We have already had State Representative Joe Carr, and we've already had Danny Page. In fact, Danny Page has been on twice at this point. And these folks have come on. They've had an hour. They've had their discussions. And I'm looking forward to having Miss Leonard on to get her viewpoint, her vision, her campaign focus, all those great conversations. So if you have an opportunity, please jot that down. Remember that January the 12th, Miss Leonard will be on Tap Into the Truth at Blog Talk. In the meanwhile, it's cold out there. A lot of folks are facing a lot of snow. So I hope that you guys manage to find yourself a nice warm spot to curl up in. That you stay warm, that you stay dry, that the lights stay on, and that everything is going your way. I do appreciate everybody who listens and appreciate everybody who takes the time to check out the website. Please keep listening. If you're a new listener, please don't forget to hit the follow button before you leave the show page. And in the meanwhile, as is always the case, and don't take my word for it, definitely don't take their word for it. Take a little time, do your own research, be prepared to do a little work if you're really planning on tapping into the truth. Thanks, everybody, and we will be back again soon. Good night.
I've been watching, begging from the front door, like lightning striking near twice before. had me love drunk. So this is goodbye. I hope all the stars they shine wherever you will go after tonight. So this is our one life. Try my best to make it right. I promise you that I will always wanna fight. Always wanna fight. Don't you forget everything that we had. All the good and worse, better till it went bad. You know me better than anything, so I bet you saw this coming. We were laughing, thinking about old times, like our first kiss when I finally called you mine. We were like, wait, everything is gonna change. Hope when I come back you know my name. I don't think I can say all I need to say. With the time left, counting down by the days, it would go by. I don't know how time flies. It's a heartbreak, but it wasn't good and right. So this is goodbye. I hope all the stars they shine wherever you will go after tonight. So this is our one life. Try my best to make it right. I promise you that I will always wanna fight.